560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan. And in for Amy J this morning is venerated Chicago Tribune columnist John Kass.
As opposed to worship, because veneration is different than worship.
Yes.
For those of us Christians who understand.
We honor.
Icons.
Yes, we honor. Boy, this topic keeps coming back this morning. We were talking to Doug Weed, a presidential historian, about shadow banning and just outright banning of conservatives and conservative content by the big social media outfits. And our next guest has also been targeted for elimination, like our friend and colleague Dennis Prager. Brigitte Gabriel is a New York Times bestselling author and terrorism expert. She has a new book out called Rise, in Defense of Judeo-Christian Values and Freedom. She was banned by Facebook by posting about the raid on that New Mexico compound where you had Islamists training children to be school shooters. Not making this up. We've stories that say one of the women in the compound had overstayed her visa for 20 years. Thinking about national security issues like immigration policy. She's banned on Facebook, Brigitte Gabriel, for posting this about one of those arrested in that raid. This is the smile of a sick and depraved Muslim terrorist who is back on the streets on bail after training children to shoot up schools. The judge who allowed this to happen should be removed from their post ASAP. If he harms anyone while on bail, the blood is on their hands. Yeah. And that got her banned from Facebook. Those pesky algorithms and conservative content checkers employed by Mark Zuckerberg. For more on her social media travails as well as the underlying substance of her book, we're pleased to be joined now by Brigitte Gabriel. Brigitte, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan and John. I'm delighted to be with you this morning.
So now Facebook has designated you apparently the same way that the Southern Poverty Law Center has, which is a hate group because you're opposed to Islamist terrorism. That relationship and that feedback you're getting as a person of Lebanese descent who is talking about the values undergirding this country as compared to the Islamist fundamentalists.
Well, exactly. I mean, in the post that I posted on Facebook was basically showing a picture of the smile, the smirk on the face of this terrorist, basically laughing, walking out of the courtroom. This is the gentleman, I shouldn't even call him a gentleman, he's a terrorist who was training children to shoot up schools. And we got to the point in our country, Dan and John, that we cannot call a terrorist, even though he has been already arrested for the crime. And out on bail. So this is the state of affair we are in, and this is exactly why I wrote the book Rise. It's a rallying cry for Americans who love our country, who care about our country, who are seeing the deterioration of our country and the destruction of our country from within, to rise up and speak up while we still can exercise our freedom of speech, while at least we can still talk to our elected officials and say, we need laws to protect the equality and expression between conservatives and libertarians and Democrats. What made America great is our ability to come together and discuss ideas and debate ideas. And out of that debate, we came up with what was best for our country, what was best for our children. Today, that is being eroded and silenced, and freedom of speech is one of our most fundamental pillars. And so this is why I wrote the book. And by the way, in each chapter of the book, I not only discuss the problem, for example, when I talk about freedom of speech and what's happening in the country, but we give people talking points and actions as to what they can do to make a difference. For example, we introduced the Free Speech Defense Act, and we have already passed that bill in 11 states, and we are now talking to members of Congress to introduce it on the federal level. We teach people where to go, how to go, what numbers to call, the name of the bill, and how they can be engaged.
Do you want the federal government to be involved in regulating social media?
Right now, what we are dealing with is basically a monopoly by the four top major social media giants like Google, Twitter, Facebook. The American public right now is no longer getting the news from the three television news network the way it used to be 40 years ago. They're not even getting it from cable news. Where they're getting it from is on their iPhones and iPads, and they're getting it through their social media, especially the millennium, especially people under 40. And this is why we must ensure that voices like ours, Christian voices, religious voices, freedom voices, journalism voices, authors, pundits, writers will be able to express their opinion without being shadow banned by Twitter, without being put in Facebook jail, banned for 24 hours as punishment for posting something like what Facebook did to me. We need to ensure that freedom of speech is protected as much as our founding fathers worked so hard to give us the liberties that we have. We must ensure that those liberties are passed to our future generations.
But freedom of speech is with respect to restraint on government. So when it comes to a college campus or a social media communication channel, isn't that different?
Can you repeat the question?
So freedom of speech, you're talking about our First Amendment freedom of speech rights. That is a restraint on government. So when we're talking about private social media giants and their communication channels, or we're talking about college campuses, unless they're taxpayer funded, that creates a bit of a complication. It's a different thing restraining a private entity than it is restraining government with respect to freedom of expression.
Well, we do not want to restrain them. We want to make sure they are fair. If they are right now, no new business outfit can compete with Facebook. We have talked to a lot of startup companies on the national level who are trying to build something like Facebook, but you can't even start because they are the mega worldwide. So I even talked with conservatives who want to launch, and I asked them, we have been approached by different people who are starting on the conservative side to start the equivalent of Facebook, as a free enterprise. And they said to us, not only we will not be able, it will be such limited exposure talking in an echo chamber if we go with them, but how else the masses are going to be exposed to our voices? Because Facebook is where the masses are. Twitter is where the masses are. So we need to make sure that there is transparency and there is equality in the treatment of voices. If they're going to be that much of a giant, that we will make sure that there is fairness. We're not telling them what to do. We're telling them that if they're going to have that big of a wider and control over social media, they need to be fair and basically letting all voices be expressed.
In your book, Rise, the issue of connecting the dots for people. So going back to this raid on this New Mexico Islamist training compound, teaching children to be school shooters. I mean, incredibly, it's really not gotten the coverage it demands. But connecting the dots from the principles of that terrorist cell to even some organizers of high-profile women's marches who've otherwise been celebrated in the Eastern establishment press, like Linda Sarsour.
Exactly. And right now we are seeing our enemies, the enemies of America, come together and work together and network together to basically destroy the America that we know right now as it was founded in the image of our founding fathers. So what we're seeing is the far left groups are regularly working with Islamic organizations such as CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, or ISNA, Islamic Society of North America, and others, to present almost every common sense intelligence and security measure that will secure the country from terrorist attacks and taking hold. So they have been colluding together, working together. For example, the left right now is also funding Islamic organizations like CARE. They are funding personalities like Linda Sarsour. In an interview with Linda Sarsour by Glamour magazine, she was bragging about how organizations like Planned Parenthood, the SPLC, CARE, MoveOn.org have stepped up to help fund the work that she is doing. Basically, also helps fund the Women's March. So this is how we are seeing them come together. For example, we know that de Blasio and wiped out basically and stopped the NYPD surveillance program of certain New York mosques that were linked to terrorism, where we know terrorists have come out of those mosques.
Right, so how important are individuals like Zuhdi Jasser, who's the founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy in this country, served our country in the Navy as lieutenant commander, those moderate voices who are thoughtful, have the leadership qualities, build organizations like he's built. Do we need to do a better job of amplifying individuals like Dr. Jasser?
Oh, Jasser is amazing, and there are a few others like him who are speaking out and putting literally their neck on the line to speak out. These are the people who deserve the funding from the ACLU, from Planned Parenthood, from these people. These are the true moderate voices who are pro-America, who are speaking out, but they're not getting any traction. What's happening right now is the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and this is exactly why we're seeing organizations like the ACLU and Planned Parenthood and the SPLC come together and work with terrorist-designated organizations like CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, and the co-conspirators like ISNA and MPAC and these type of organizations. So this is where we are right now. Organizations like ours, Dan and John, work with the likes of Zuhdi Jasser, work with the likes of Tawfiq Hamid, many of the moderates, Islamic moderates who are speaking out, but organizations like ours do not have the funding and the deep pockets like the SPLC, who's got hundreds of millions of dollars in its bank accounts offshore.
She is Brigitte Gabriel. She's the chairman of Act for America. Her new book, she's a New York Times bestseller, her new book, easy for me to say, Rise in Defense of Judeo-Christian Values and Freedom. Brigitte, thanks for joining us. Good luck with your book.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
And she joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.